Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes, and this is the Daily Brief. So we'll start by looking at the losses of the Russians in Ukraine. It doesn't look like it is substantially worse. I mean, there was an uptick in the numbers off the battlefield by 100 or so, maybe 200, but these numbers for tanks and armored vehicles and artillery isn't all that much different. Now, if we look at Andrew Perpetua does great work. He tries to tabulate all the losses that he can find, and it's about two-thirds Russian, one-third Ukrainian. I like to see greater percentage of Russian, but this is where we are. Okay, let's look at this in the Euromaidan press. Ukraine downs all 13 Russian explosive drones last night as Russian missiles kill at least one civilian. Okay, so what we know about that is the drones all were wiped off. Great. But there were Russian missiles and they had some effect. Early on 18 April, the Russian military attacked Ukraine with 13 Shahed drones, all of which were successfully downed by Ukrainian forces. Great so far. This morning, an infrastructure facility and enterprise were damaged by Russian missile strikes. The head of the Dnipropetrovsk, I'm sorry, I really just slaughter Ukrainian words, and I do try. Regional state administration said on Telegram, the moment of the report, 2 strike-induced fires were still ongoing. But that's just in that region that I can't pronounce. Over the past day in Donetsk Oblast, listen to this, experienced 1,816 Russian fire attacks. Just in one day, in just one oblast. Russian forces targeted 5 populated areas, damaging 22 civilian objects, including 19 residential buildings, schools, and an administrative building. And where's the world's outrage? Last night, Russian troops launched 10 missiles strikes in Donetsk Oblast, but we're not hearing about how many were actually shot down. Meanwhile, search and rescue operations in Chernihiv following a Russian missile attack, 3 Iskander cruise missiles on 17 April. We talked about that yesterday. And that hit a hospital. And again, where's the world's outrage? It's not there. Okay, in the meantime, what Ukraine hit yesterday was substantiated on 17 April as a result of successful operation by the armed forces of Ukraine at the military airfield in Crimea. Following Russian targets were destroyed or critically damaged 4 S-400s. This is the kind of thing that was destroyed, 4 of these, and these things are expensive. 3 radar detection systems, Air Defense Command and Control Center, fundamental airspace surveillance equipment. So it wasn't a bad day for Ukraine and what they were trying to attack. Okay, now I'm not going to talk about this at great length because I'm probably going to talk about it as more of an update in the the 3 big stories that I do daily. But Johnson is taking the plunge on Ukraine aid in face of an ouster threat. So he is actually putting something on the floor. I think we're going to see it on Saturday from what I'm reading. Speaker Mike Johnson is taking the plunge on a massive package of foreign aid. Johnson has won early Democratic support for his multi-pronged strategy to provide military assistance to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, accompanied by a grab-all package of Republican national security priorities designated to appease wary conservatives. So there's still a little pushback. I saw Steny Hoyer saying, just put the Senate bill on the floor. But I think Democrats will go with this. Republicans will largely go with, well, when I say largely, they'll have probably at half or so of Republicans. I don't know if it'll be north of that or south of that, but there'll be plenty of Republican support as well. It should pass. It should pass because it also looks like a loan, which will probably never get paid back, and everybody knows it. Or there's talk about things like, well, you'll get your frozen assets back when the war damage is paid, or things along those lines. Anyway. Okay, I'm not going to belabor this right now. Again, we'll talk about it later. The plan drew immediate backlash from hardliners in the conference, including spending hawks. But it's really not the spending hawks as much as it is MAGA supporters who are the obstacle. Spending hawks are always obstacles, but it's not like to pin it on them is just not fair. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, a frequent critic of the Speaker, has already introduced a motion to remove him from power, a resolution that's hanging over the coming Ukraine votes, lying in wait for Greene to force it to the floor. And that threat became more menacing on Tuesday when Thomas Massie, a Kentucky Republican with a libertarian streak, announced that he would also support it. Okay, so, but what does it matter? It's going to go forward. If Marjorie Taylor Greene does put that forward and it fails, it neutralizes her threat for the future. So having the threat is actually more powerful than actually pulling the trigger. Okay. Over 2,000 imported components found in Russian Su-series fighter jets, according to Ukrainian intel, which I found to be absolutely fascinating. But, I'm sure there's some kind of Japanese or other imported parts, German or whatever, in some of ours. But this is where sanctions should be doing their work, but they're really not. The analysis shows that imports from Matura components into Russia have increased by 38% in 2022, 12.7% in 2023 compared to pre-invasion levels. And so we find that these Russian military components are coming from Hungary, from Cyprus, Turkey, China, even in Russia, they're getting right through into Russia. And so that's pretty stunning. All right, next, Russian. So yesterday I was on a live stream with Greg Terry and Operator Starsky, and we were talking about Russian propaganda. This is germane to what we're talking about. Russian occupation court convicts Jehovah's Witness of extremism for reading excerpts of the Bible. He wasn't trying to overthrow the system. He was just reading the Bible or organizing a Bible study. A court in Russian-occupied Sevastopol has found Maxim Shinchenko guilty of involvement in an extremist organization for practicing his faith as a Jehovah's Witness. Such convictions have become virtually standard since Russia brought religious persecution to occupied Crimea. Now, I've seen multiple reports of this, and I'm just highlighting it again because we were just talking about it in this video yesterday. Zinchenko was charged under Article 282.2 Section 2 of Russia's criminal code. So it's codified into law with taking part in the activities of religious association, which has been banned by a court for surprisingly taking part in extremist activities. Okay, so what is going on? Again, he's not trying to overthrow the government. Maxim Zinchenko and his wife Katerina were subjected to an armed search of their home in Fedosia in early morning of 22 May 2023. The men who burst into their home ordered them and another couple who were staying with them to lie on the floor before taking Zinchenko away. He was placed under house arrest 2 days later. For what? Again, for trying to organize Bible reading or religious service kind of stuff. The criminal proceedings against Zinchenko for supposed, quote, participation in an extremist organization, unquote, were initiated by investigator Nikolai Pogorelov. Pogorelov had threatened both Zinchenko and his wife if they did not cooperate with the investigation. Maxim was told that his wife would be remanded in custody, Katerina that her husband would get a long sentence, and she would be prevented from seeing him. The evidence against the believer was from a video recording of a service illicitly taped by FSB. Wait, so FSB agents are infiltrating Jehovah's Witnesses church service? For what? Okay, back in 2019, and already used to impose hefty sentences against these other people. Like, what on earth? It's more like KGB clamping down on the church in Soviet Union days. What? So, and again, the articles goes on and talks about others who had gotten sentences and things along those lines. But I read this and I think, like, where is Tucker Carlson? Like, why is he only highlighting when Ukraine does, say, Russia's Russian Orthodox Church, you're not permitted to operate here because you're funneling propaganda, and he shuts it down. He doesn't even talk about it like that. He just talks about Ukraine's outlawing an entire religion. What about what Russia's doing? Like, if he was even-handed, that'd be one thing, but he has an agenda, and that's the difficulty. Okay, saw this on Twitter, and then I followed it through. Sure enough, here it is in Reuters. The two German-Russian nationals have been arrested in Germany on suspicion of plotting sabotage attacks, including U.S. military facilities, in a serious effort to undermine military support for Ukraine, officials say on Thursday. again, I mean, verifiable kind of stuff. I do want to say thank you. Like yesterday, I set up a Patreon page for the first time, and I've been resisting doing that. I would urge you to join for free because there's a lot of crazy stuff. If you just want to join for free, do that. This is my backup plan. If you want to support me, I greatly appreciate those of you who have chosen to support me. And I want to say thank you to my Patreon supporters here because these people, this was within 24 hours, these people stepped up. And this is my backup because I keep putting myself forward to try to help those like reporting from Ukraine or Warthog Early or Joe Blogs or whatever. And I'm sure that that's not going to go well over time. But YouTube has been really hard to get a hold of or hard to right the ship. They've been able to do it in some cases, but I'm not sure that it's always going to be there. So Patreon is my backup plan, and I'll still be able to maintain if something goes squirrely in YouTube. So thank you. Please join me on Patreon. And again, for those of you who support, I appreciate that so much. That's so encouraging. But at minimum, please come over and join for free. I've already started putting up the videos, and that's my practice now. I'm going to be putting it up on YouTube and on Patreon. All right. That's all that I have. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes. And again, I really do want to say thank you to these patrons who have been willing to step up. So encouraging. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.